Hey everyone in the VC and out there in YouTube land, it's Matt checking in from Fort Worth, Texas, where it is 298 degrees right now outside there. So I'm staying inside. Been a good while since I've done a video. Just been tied up with other things, but wanted to do this because it sounded like a fun thread to jump in on. I'm sure you all have seen this. It's been going around for the past week or two, something like that, and it is. I don't know the official name. It's the 10 albums you listen to most, or your 10 top 10 go-to albums, something like that. And I've been having fun with it. I've been watching a lot of probably 20 to 30 videos from different people. Some people that I know on here and subscribe to, and quite a few people that I wasn't familiar with, but they just pop up in the feed. So I've been watching them, and it's been fun to watch everybody's choices there with their top 10 or so albums that they listen to most. Some of the usual suspects, the albums that you'd see all the time, but some surprise out of left field choices by some people, and quite frankly, there's some bands and singers that some people are showing, and I've never even heard of the band. So it's been fun to watch and see everybody's different takes on this. Now, I don't know exactly on the thread, and some other people have kind of questioned what the exact rules are per se here. I don't know if it's supposed to be the 10 albums that you've listened to the most in your entire life, or whether it's supposed to be kind of a loosely based 10 albums you go to, or sort of a 10 albums you've listened to the most over the past couple of 2 or 3 years or so, say. So for that reason, I've decided to do 2 lists of 10. I'm going to try to do the albums I've listened to the most in my lifetime, which I've been listening to music all my life, and I've been listening to music seriously and intently since now about the time I was 8 or so up to now. And so I didn't exactly, this is not scientific, this is just best guess to try to figure this out, but I do have a pretty good idea of the albums that I've listened to the most in my life, roughly speaking. I didn't keep track or write down the number of times I've listened to each of these albums since 1972 or whatever, but I've got a rough estimate. And which funny, because watching this and some people were talking about that, how do you figure out what you've listened to the most in your life and all, and it reminded me I'd forgotten about, because I love movies as much as music, and used to go to the movies all the time. And I do remember being like 11 or 12 for a year or two there, and I had just a regular notebook, and I write down, I'd go to movies pretty much every week, and I'd write down the movie and then write, I think it was like a 1 to 5 star rating. Don't remember, it might have been a 1 to 10 rating, and the movie and how much I liked it just on a rating. And that notebook's long gone now. I wish I still had it. It'd be fun to see, because I remember some of those movies I saw back then, but it'd be fun to see some of the movies that don't remember and all. But unfortunately, I didn't make little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 check marks every time I listened to an album to keep track of how many times I've listened to whatever album. But like I said, I've got a fairish idea. So I'm going to start off with the 10 as best I can remember albums, and I think it's actually 11 albums here, but the 10 or 11 albums that I think are the ones that I've listened to the most in my lifetime. And the other thing people were saying, this is not necessarily your favorite, top 10 favorite albums of all times, but it's more the albums you tend to go to more than any other albums. And I did 10, 11 years ago here, I did a video of my top 10 favorite albums of all time. There's a little overlap. There's some things that aren't on that top 10 list, because some of the Who Sell Out and the first Funkadelic album are on my top 10 favorite albums of all time list. They're not here. I've listened to those albums, I don't know how many times, a ton of times, but I think I listened to these albums more than those. And then But there are some things that are on that top 10 list, and there's some things that are not. Just the things I tend to go to. But this first one, and these are in no order. With maybe the first three would be the three I've listened to the most, or I don't know. I know that the first one definitely, almost definitely, is going to be the one I've listened to the most. But other than that, they're not in any real order. It's just the 11-ish albums I've listened to the most in my lifetime, to my best guess here. So this is the stock answer. It's going to be no surprise. My favorite band of all time, and they're the band that I've listened to more than any other band or any singer. And this is in fact on my top 10. This is my favorite Beatles album. This is my actually favorite album of all time. So yeah, I've had this since about 1972, 1973, when I was 8-9 years old. And I don't, no idea how many times I've played this in my life. I know I've played it a lot. And so it's just a Beatles album. And I can't, again, totally say, have I played this more than I played the White Album or Revolver or Yesterday and Today or, you know, even Let It Be? I don't know, but this is up there. So the album that I played the most in my life has got to be a Beatles album, and if this isn't it, it's way up there. So Beatles' second album, great album, rock and roll and sort of the Beatles soul album. They do a lot of soul music covers on here, and not a bad song. Just love that album. So this one also would be on my top 10 favorite albums of all time list. And this is my second favorite band, Kinks Village Green Preservation Society. Just love this album, adore it. I don't know how many times I played it. And you know, same argument. Have I played this more than I played Arthur or Face to Face or something else, or Lola or some other Kinks album? I don't know, maybe, probably. But so there's that one. Number 3, so my third favorite band of all time, Sound Effects by The Jam. I remember when I discovered this band, actually discovered them, and I'd heard of them, but I actually discovered them in '82, and they broke up that same year, but they'd been around since the late 70s. But anyway, this came out in 1980. But just another flawless album, and I've got several copies of, well, all the first 3 albums I showed. I've got them on vinyl, CD. Play these, get a lot of play on my turntable through the years. A lot of play, cassettes back in the day, CDs still now. Anyway, flawless album, love it to death. Next one up. So I love a lot of Pink Floyd music, but the Sid years, the Sid era, which was very short, is my favorite period of the band. This is my favorite album of the band's, and the one I play most. I just absolutely love the Saucer Full of Secrets that follows this up through Obscured by Clouds. That sort of crazy, weird, cool, fun period of the band. Their big fame years, I adore Animals. The other 3 I appreciate more than I actually enjoy, I guess. Not that I don't like them, but this is my favorite, and I played this just, and I actually discovered this from the Nicholas Schaffner book, The Beatles Forever. He mentions it just in passing, and I got that book when it came out back in 78 or so, and saw some reference to this. It's just a sentence where he's talking about other psychedelic albums that came out in the wake of Sgt. Pepper, and that got my curiosity up, and so I went to the record store and found this, and have had this since I was 7th grade or so. But just a great psychedelic album. A lot of people compare it to Pepper. I think it's sort of a mix of Pepper and, say, Rolling Stones' Satanic Majesties of Crust. It's got that sort of English, innocent, childlike, freewheeling psychedelia of the Beatles, but also sort of the darker stuff of the Stones, and even like something like Forever Changes by Love or something like that. But Syd Barrett, I wish he would have been able to stick around to make at least a few more albums. But great stuff. Yeah, we'll go here because I've got some of these I don't have on vinyl. I only have on CD, but let's get the vinyl out of the way since these aren't in any order. Rolling Stones, Between the Button. Again, this is my favorite Rolling Stones album. I don't know. Have I played this more than I played Some Girls or Sticky Fingers or Let It Bleed or even the first album? I love the first album, their debut. But I know I played this a lot through my life. And the funny thing is, with some of these albums I haven't listened to in quite a while, but it's just, I'm just trying to get the overall arc of my life, because I think it's been, more than a year since I played this one, and I played other Rolling Stones albums the past year. But I'll get back to it. So sometimes, you might go for a while without listening to them, and they're like an old friend when you come back to them. But in the overall, and then there's periods where I'll just play any of these just over and over and over when I was young. Now when I'm not so young. So I always come back to them, and that's why they're on the list. This takes me back to being in ninth grade, back in high school days. And another just perfect album, not a bad song on it. Of course, when I was in ninth grade, it was Cheap Trick at Budokan, and then this followed right after. So when I saw them back then, when I think it was ninth grade, maybe 10th grade, saw them in concert. I saw them a couple of years ago again. So like whatever that was, the 30-something years apart. But yeah, just reminds me of being good old days of being in high school. And I have this on CD. I was a couple of weeks ago. Got a long drive to work, so I play CDs a lot. Sometimes I listen to the radio, but I play CDs a lot, and so I was playing this a lot 2 weeks or so ago. So, my favorite Paul album would actually be Ram. This would be number 2. And best Beatles solo album, I would say, would be a tie between, or a close, very close between Plastic Ono Band, Imagine, and All Things Must Pass. This is my favorite Beatles solo album, though, and I just love this. I wish he would hurry up and do the archive on this and London Town 2. But, yeah, I remember buying this. I had my first job. I worked at a movie theater, and got my paycheck and came into work the next day and stopped at the record store in the mall by the movie theater and picked this up, and I just love this album. And so yeah, that's Back to the Egg. It gets a lot of play. We'll knock the CDs out here, and I was thinking of bands I love, like the Bangles and the Pretenders and Blondie and Sandy Denny, Linda Ronstadt, stuff like that. And I play the Shangri-Las, going back to the old girl group stuff, and I play that stuff all the time, or quite a bit. I play it a lot. And but the one that I probably played the most, and I've got their first 2 albums on vinyl. For some reason I used to have this on cassette, and I only have it on CD now, and I don't think I ever had it on vinyl. But yeah, I just remember, you think of 1984, a couple of big albums, and this was big too. It was sort of back in the background, but it got a lot of play on cassette in my car, and through the years, I keep going back to this. Their first album is the one that gets all the attention, and deservedly so. It's a really good album. Second album gets kind of forgotten, and that's a shame because it's pretty good too. But I think this is their best album, and through the years, you got Beneath the Blue Sky might be my favorite song by the band, and Turn to You, Head Over Heels, Yes or No, Forget That Day. Not a bad song on here. Love the Go-Go's, love Talk Show. Again, how many times have I played this from 1984 to now? I can't even begin to count. And speaking of 1984, just a wonderful, wonderful year. Some people might argue that 1999 or Sign of the Times is Prince's best album, and it'd be hard to disagree because those are great albums too. I love them, but I think this is the best. And this was just such a event album. I remember when Sergeant Pepper came out, somewhat, I was 3 or 4 years old, but my two older brothers and my cousin Karen around the corner and their friends across the street, John and Larry and Susan and Karen McCoy and Julie and Shelley from down the street and all them. I remember them going back in the living room to play the Sergeant Pepper album. They got it when it came out. And, I was a little kid. I didn't know. I didn't go Beatle crazy until, like I said, late 72 or so when I was about 8 years old. I knew who they were and liked them all right. But I do remember people playing Sergeant Pepper and that being a big deal and all. This was sort of like that. I remember the summer of '84. It seemed like everybody had this in their car on cassette or, had the album, was playing it. They started playing When Doves Cry on the radio and on MTV, back when MTV was still cool and fun and worth watching and exciting. So I liked that song. I went and saw the movie on opening day, Friday and opening day. Kind of looking forward to it, but more out of just kind of curiosity, because I knew Prince from 1999 and the videos on MTV from a year or so before. But went in, other than When Doves Cry, not knowing what to expect or any of the music. Movie opens up with Let's Go Crazy, just blew me away. Loved the movie, loved the music, went straight from the movie theater to Sound Warehouse, bought the album on vinyl, which I don't have anymore. Anyway, went home, played it over and over and over, and that was a great thing about being young and when music was good back in those days, and you would discover an album and just, that's all you would play for like 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. And some of these albums have shown were the same thing, but this was definitely one of them. Went home, played the album. My buddy got off work at 5 o'clock or something. He lived next door to me. I said, man, we gotta go see this movie. So we went and saw it again. I saw it again. And a couple of days later, my girlfriend, she was at work at the time, and her and I went and saw the movie. And I just remember us running around, riding around, young and having fun, and playing this on the car cassette deck and listening to the album at home. Anyway, how many times have I played that since 1984? Your guess is as good as mine. Obviously, this or the band, the first album, The Clash, the self-titled album, gets my vote for the best album of the 70s. This is one of those. It was released at the end of the 70s here and at the beginning of the 80s in England, or vice versa. But anyway, whatever. Flawless, perfect, great album. And I remember wasn't old enough to drive yet when this came out, or I knew how to drive, but I didn't have a driver's license yet. So I walked down to the mall and bought it, and I remember walking home with it, carrying the album under my arm and getting home and playing it on the stereo, and been playing it ever since. And I have this on vinyl, but it's over there and I'm lazy today. So Too-Rye-Ay, Dexy's Midnight Runners. Love this band. Sadly, they're in America, everyone knows Come On Eileen and nothing else. They were a little bit better known, had a few more hits over in England, and they made 3 albums in the 80s. All 3 of them are superb, and I probably listened to the 3 of them about the same. Searching for the Young Soul Rebels in 1980, this in 1982, and Don't Stand Me Down in 1985. They just put out a new album, which I bought with no expectations whatsoever, being that they're not 20-year-old kids anymore. They're old men like me, even older than me. So I didn't have any expectations. I'm not going to say it's as good as their 80s stuff, but it's not far off, and it's damn good. And there's maybe do a video on that sometime. So check out their new album if you get a chance, because there's some songs on there you'll listen and you'll be checking the calendar to make sure it's not still 1983. And there's some songs that have a kind of a fresh, newer sound, but really good. Anyway, this isn't a Dexy's review video, but love Dexy's Midnight Runners, and I played this over and over and over through the years. They're going on tour in America for the first time since 1983. Unfortunately, they're not coming to Texas, but I said I always wanted to see them, so I'm going to go see them in Denver in November. So, all right, now these are albums that I've, over the past, I'll say 2 years or so, been playing. You know how you get stuck on an album, or I do anyway. Been playing a lot, and let me grab this. So figured I'd do that too. Wire, another great band, post-punk band, or whatever you want to call them. They're actually still around. They still make good albums. I don't know, they last time they had an album out was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little more. This is from back in the 70s and 80s run. This is their third album, I think, if I have it right. That's Pink Flag and the one with the squiggly lines and then Chairs Missing. I don't know. Anyway, just a great band that unfortunately never got as much attention as they deserve, because one of the best bands out there, and definitely worth checking out. So, Wire, and I've got quite a few of the, not all of their albums, but quite a few. But this is the one I go to. This is probably my favorite of theirs. But they've got several really good albums. Springsteen, been playing this. Got stuck on this one for some reason, and I like all of his stuff up through Born in the USA. After that, there's some good stuff that gets kind of hit or miss. I don't think he ever reach those heights again as far as a complete album past Born in the USA, but love his first two albums. Of course, Born to Run, Darkness on the Edge of Town is probably my favorite album of his, but The River might be too. But this one is just a really stark, just full of with dark and murder ballads and hard life stories and spare and kind of beautiful. But yeah, Nebraska, Springsteen. It's not an easy listen, but it sure is a good one. Fills your soul in a way. So I said, Who Sell Out's my favorite Who album, and that's true. But lately, actually, I didn't want to pull all three, but I've been playing this and the Who by Numbers and Odds and Sods over the past, and it's been a little while since I played any of them, but I did go through a big Who period here just 3 or 4 months ago, and those other two albums, but this one was the one I was playing. Got a CD player over here you can't see, and I was playing it a lot, just going to bed and listening to this, and but I've played the album too. So this is the that half mastered whatever that came out. They're putting the Who's album out on the half-speed master deals, and I've got an old vinyl copy, but this is sounding good. So, been listening to Tommy by the Who a lot lately. Listen to a lot of Talking Heads. This and Remain in Light specifically. In fact, I had to go run around today, and I was listening to this on CD in the car. And the past I don't know, couple of 2 or 3 weeks, Talking Heads have gotten a lot of rotation in the car and on the turntable. So, and this is 1980, I think, right? So, just this is just a stunning, wonderful album. If you don't have it, I wish I had. When they were around, I remember them coming playing shows, and I just for some reason never went and saw them. Kick myself now. Same with the Ramones, and there's several bands like that. I actually never saw Blondie, and I don't know why, just had to work or something. But same with Talking Heads. I really wish I would have had a chance to have seen them live. And they're supposed to be doing a remaster expanded edition of the Stop Making Sense movie, I think, for the anniversary coming up, which I think is next year. I think it came out in '84. This one's kind of a surprise to me, but I've been playing this a lot, and this was always one of my lesser Rolling Stones albums. In fact, when I was younger, I didn't really like this too much. There was a couple of songs aside on here that I liked all right, but I kind of like, But The last few years, I don't know, it just clicked, and I've really fallen in love with this album and been enjoying it. And playing other Rolling Stones albums too, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just a change of pace from playing Exile and Some Girls and Beggars Banquet and so forth. But yeah, and I don't think this is generally considered one of their better albums by most people either. So my finger out of mixed nose there, but yeah, I've surprised me. I've really enjoyed playing this lately, and I might put it on the turntable after I finish this video. As a matter of fact, summertime, you always got to play some Beach Boys. But even the past few months, this has been my go-to record on the Beach Boys. Been playing this. This is from the box set that came out a few years ago, and just a strange, wonderful, brilliant album. Smile by the Beach Boys. I don't know what we're up to here, but Easter Everywhere, 13th Floor Elevators. This is their second album, right? Bull in the Woods is the third. That's right, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, but I've been playing I've got a box set of their vinyl albums and a box set of their CDs. So out of print now and hard to find. But I've been playing, just pulled this out 5-6 months ago, kind of on a whim, and then played the rest of the records in there. Hadn't listened to them in forever. I've had these albums for years and years, but the box sets came out 10 or so years ago, and I've had their first album, The Psychedelic Sounds of 13th Floor Elevators, since I was a kid. But yeah, I kind of got stuck on the 13th Floor Elevators. Great Texas band, and just really, I might play them after I play the Rolling Stones. We'll see. This one was a surprise, and I've been playing this over the past, I think this came out a couple of years ago, Record Store Day. An album that I'd heard of, never heard, and it was a special Record Store Day, whatever, limited release, blah, 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 whatever. I just picked it up. I was going through, had no plans to get it, but I was going through looking at other stuff I was hoping to get on that particular Record Store Day, saw it, and said, yeah, what the hell. And yeah. So this is Jefferson Starship Blows Against the Empire, which is kind of funny because it's Paul Kantner's kind of solo album, and he calls it Jefferson Starship. But Jefferson Starship, the proper band, if I'm remembering this correct, didn't really get started till a year or two after this album came out. So I don't know, but it's kind of a gap between Jefferson Airplane and when Jefferson Starship came along. And I picked this up, like I said, just for grins. I wasn't expecting, didn't know what to expect. Really loved the album. And so it's got Kantner, Grace Slick, some of the other people that were in Jefferson Airplane. Jerry Garcia's on it, playing guitar here and there. And David Crosby, I think. There's some other people like that. But yeah, that's kind of your hippie Summer of Love, even though this came out in 1970 or something like that. But anyway, it's that sort of stuff, but it's done really well. And I've been yeah, enjoying this and playing this a lot over the last like I said, this was out on Record Store Day a year or two ago. Since then, it's just got frequent spins on the turntable. Last one, this is his, well, actually he's put out an album since this that just came out, but this was his last album of original material. His new album is him redoing his old songs or doing cover versions of other songs. I don't know, I haven't bought it yet. But yeah, for he's what, 82, almost 83 now, and to put out an album this good this late in his career. But I've been on a Dylan kick. I went to the Dylan Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma 3 or 4 months ago. I know it was before it got really hot. Wonderful thing. If you ever get to Tulsa, check it out. It's a cool thing to see. The Woody Guthrie Center is right next door to it. But I'd also gotten a year or so back this big box set of all his, pretty much, not the bootleg series and not some of the greatest hits, but all his studio albums and a lot of live albums in there. And I played through this whole set 2 or 3 times, because I had a lot of Dylan albums from way back when, but a lot of these I didn't have. So it was fun to discover these. It's fun to discover that some of the albums that were not held in high critical esteem, that were said to be kind of stinkers, are actually not that bad. Some of them, and some of them were less good than others, but yeah, I've been playing a lot of Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61 Revisited, and John Wesley Harding and Slow Train Coming. So those have been kind of my go-to albums. Freewheeling is probably my favorite Dylan album, but just been fun kind of getting into some of these other albums that I didn't have, which I didn't have Slow Train Coming and quite a few of those. So yeah, that's my albums I've played the most in my life, I guess, I think, and albums that I've played a whole lot in the past 2 years or so. So hope it's cooler wherever you are, and hope you have a good rest of the summer. Fall will get here eventually, I hope, in college football. Take care. Bye bye.